Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. We have a very, very special show today. We have Brother David Steindl Rest, and he is going to be talking about gratitude with us. And Brother David is a Benedictine monk, and we're going to talk all about his practice of gratitude. So welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
So tell me, how does one become a monk? When you were deciding to become a monk, what were you seeking?
Well, I grew up during the war, World War II, and we've had bombs and death all around us, and yet we had a very happy uh, childhood and youth. And then when the war was over, uh, I suddenly had life ahead of me, and that was a great surprise. And there I remember the passage that I had read in a little book called The Root of St. Benedict. It's 1500 years old, and in which St. Benedict describes how to set up a monastery. And in this little book, there was a sentence that said, to have death at all times before your eyes. And
Wow.
suddenly I remembered we had had death at all times before our eyes, and that's why we had to live in the present moment, and that's why we were so joyful. We, there
Mm,
was no next moment.
yeah.
Now the war was over and I had life ahead of me, so I remembered that again, and I thought, well, maybe that's how I ought to live, and I connected that with Benedictine life, because that is part of the life of a monk, to have death before your eyes, but not in a morbid way, but as incentive to live every moment in the present moment, now
Mm,
and now and now, and really respond to life moment by moment.
hmm.
Uh, uh, that was a good choice. I don't regret it. It was more than 60 years ago, but I really,
Yeah. So when you entered in the monastery, did you have any sense of what your life would be like from that point on? Because you went in there thinking, I want to, it's about being present, even though the passage is about death.
that was the most important thing, to be really present to life, moment by moment, because that's what we had experienced as children and young people under the pressure of death, and now we could do it without the pressure of bombs
Yeah.
falling left and right, and our friends dying in the war every month, every other month, somebody was dying that was classmate or a friend. So now it was life, and if you had the same attitude. Uh,
Hmm.
In the monastery, everything is very orderly. You know exactly what you're going to do at this and this and this hour of the day and this day of the week. And I remember thinking ahead at that time, 1970 was ages ahead, and I would be thinking, oh, in 1970, on Wednesday, March the 3rd, I know exactly what I will be. There was a certain feast of a saint, and we would sing these and these psalms
Right.
and I'm the type that was perfectly happy with that. That's
Yeah.
how I wanted life to be, but it came completely differently.
Okay, so so you had this actually very structured life where, and in some ways I wonder whether if you have a very structured life, you can become more present because you don't have to worry about what's coming next because you know exactly what's coming next.
That's exactly it. Yes. Uh, the structured life helps you eliminate distractions.
Hmm.
That is the idea of it.
Hmm.
And also, the structured life forces you to do what it is time to do. And so in the
Hmm.
monastery, we have all these bells, and we are taught that when the bell rings, the young monk drops everything he's doing. We're even told when you're writing and the bell rings, don't put the dot on the I and don't cross the T. Just drop it there and then. And then it's time for something else. And that
Wow.
is a very good exercise for doing what it is time for. And that's
Right.
something that not only monks need to practice, but everybody can practice that.
Yeah, because we want to move, we want to finish whatever that dot the T, dot the I, and we can't be complete. There's a part of us that feels we can't be complete unless I cross the T and dot the I. Isn't that fascinating? So when you actually just drop it, does it? What does that feel? I've never even done that, so I don't even know what it feels like.
Well, what it does is it breaks the automatic momentum. We have in our lives an automatic momentum. You get into the car and you do things automatically. You're
Yes.
not thinking, now I have to start it, now I have to give gas. It goes all automatic. And to a certain extent, that is desirable and necessary. If you always had to think,
Right.
now I have to give gas, that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But this automatic habit of doing things automatically tends to take over our whole life. And everything that's automatic isn't alive. It's either
Mm.
automatic, then it's mechanical, or it is surprising and different, then it's alive. And to break that automatism, that is why you stop.
Mm.
Because automatically you are inclined to continue. You're now I'm writing, well, write at least finish this. No, stop.
Yeah.
This
Wow.
stop is a very important thing.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you so your current life is not the life of a typical Benedictine monk. How, how did you get to where you are now? Where you're in the mainstream now, I know you just, you came to your hotel room and you probably flew someplace and you're flying someplace else. You're kind of in the mainstream living the path of all of us now. uh, how did you get there?
Yeah, that's very strange because Benedictine monks always stay in the same
Yeah.
place. That is one of our principles. We belong to this community, and normally we stay in this community. And that was very important in the course of history because in the Dark Ages, when cities were wiped out and the Vikings were coming and the Tartars were coming and the Huns were coming and they were destroying everything every so often. The only place that you knew would always be there were the monasteries because they were rebuilt. They were
Mm.
destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt. And there are monasteries in Austria where I'm living now much of the time that are more than 1,000 years old. And
Mm.
they were destroyed and rebuilt. And they were sort of the what formed the basis for our European culture, from which then the American culture also descended.
Mm-hmm.
They were sort of firm points.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very important in the course of history.
Yeah, so your current life, what is your community? Because you said that there was a stable presence in the community and the anchor. So what is your community? The world? What is it?
Well, after I was in my community for about 15 years or so, uh, yeah, 15 years, 12, 15 years, I got our abbot sent us out. He sent the young monks out to give talks because he was invited to give talks and he had too many invitations, so he sent some of the young monks out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of those that was sent out to give talks, usually at universities, and usually what people were interested in was monastic life.
Mm.
And so this was now the 60s, late 60s, mid 60s. Young people were always interested in what was monastic life
Yeah.
like. And as I was going out, I was discovering that there were all of a sudden Buddhist monks. We had never heard of Buddhist monks and Hindu monks. And
Uh-huh.
maybe we knew they were existing somewhere in India, but they were running around in the streets of New York City.
Yeah.
So I had to inform myself. If I talk about monastic life, is this something that connects us? Or is it something different? So I had to read up a little bit on monastic life, and
Yeah.
I read a book by D.T. Suzuki that was at that time a famous book, and it was called The Training of a Zen Buddhist Monk. And
Hmm.
I was so surprised because it was exactly like our own training. And there was no connection between the two historically or geographically. They were on opposite points of the world. So I discovered that monastic life is really, as Thomas Merton put it at one point, an instinct of the human heart. There is an
Mm.
archetype in every human being, the archetype of the monk, just as we have the archetype of the king or princess or magician in us, so we have
Yeah.
the archetype of the monk, each one of us. And then friends of mine said, "Oh, you should meet one of those monks." So I met a young monk that had just come from Japan via Hawaii, and that was my first live monk of another
Yeah.
day. And I didn't know what we would do together, but we met in front of the Museum of Modern Metropolitan Museum in New York City because I thought we'd probably go in there and look at Oriental art and then
Right.
we have something to talk about. And he said he went, made this appointment to meet at the Met because was so new to New York. That was about one of the few places he could find.
Oh,
He
that's
lived on the
funny.
other side of Central Park and he was just walking across. So we met there and we never went into the museum. We took one look. We never spent 1 minute on small talk, and we sat down on the bench and we had a real deep conversation
Mm.
for hours. And
Wow.
it showed me how much we have in common with
Mm-hmm.
other traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And this interreligious dialogue, which now is an important element in the world, was really started by monks because they have already so much in common, although they come from many different traditions. And
Mm.
that is how I got into interreligious dialogue. And at that time, there was a protests against the Vietnam War. And so I thought I was invited to the second teach-in at the University of Michigan. So I thought, well, that was a nice opportunity, a team in Vietnam. You have the Catholics and you have the Buddhists. So I go with the Buddhists
Mm.
and we make a little team. And he came along, so we went there together and even made a little manifesto.
Yeah.
So it was fun and we were together, you see.
Yeah. So did your experience, so was it Thich Nhat Hanh that you met, or who was the monk that you were meeting at that time?
Also at that time, yes, yes. We were at the same time at Columbia University, and I still have somewhere a napkin, a paper napkin on which he wrote a haiku for me.
That's so sweet. All right, do you remember what the haiku was?
No
You
idea.
don't have it. Okay.
It
S-
was
So you're meeting with all these monks, and you see that there's a similarity in your lifestyle. It's like we all have this desire to go inside and know, and so you're meeting with them. And did you find that there? I mean, I think the answer is yes, but I want to know what you found when you're thinking, oh, what is God? Because I'm sure you asked, what is God, and what is spirituality, and what is love? You probably got these big concepts that you were talking about. And when you did, were there little ahas for you that enriched your understanding? And if you can, what are they? I know because I just asked like a gigantic question, but
No,
um,
that's a very good question, uh, particularly when you use the term God, because the Buddhists don't like to use that term God. So when I had dialogues with my Buddhist teacher, um, I would always avoid the word God because I didn't want to offend him.
right,
But I was talking about that great mystery. I might
right,
call it the ground of being or so. Uh, and we had good conversations about it. And before I knew it, he was always using the term God. He was using the term God because he wasn't frightened or threatened by it. I wasn't insisting on it. I still wasn't using it, but he felt we were talking about the same thing. And
mm,
the same thing is what I call mystery. And that
mm,
is not some mysterious word or wishy-washy expression, but by mystery I mean something very specific, and it is that uh, actuality with which, as human beings, every one of us has to deal, uh, and we cannot grasp it. We cannot get hold of it. But we can understand it, which is a very different thing from grasping, by allowing it to grab us. Leonard of Clairvaux, a great monk of the Middle Ages, said, what we can grasp gives us knowledge, but what grabs us gives us wisdom. And that's what we are really after. Grasp and get into our grip by concepts and intellectual thought, that gives us at best knowledge. But when we open our heart and allow it to do something to us, then we come alive and understand. And a good example that most people have experienced is music. You can grasp anything about a piece of music. You can intellectually, you can know who wrote it and in what style and a lot of information about this piece of music. But unless you know about it, but you don't really understand it. But if you listen to it, you don't need to know much about it. You feel something. It does you, and that is what we mean by understanding music. Yeah. You have a relationship to it. The same happens with the great mystery. You may call it life, or it goes far beyond life. And those who use the term God correctly use it also for that.
Okay.
We interact with that mystery.
Yeah.
That's what we're made for.
Yeah.
Whether you call it God or not, Buddhists do exactly the same. It's this great mystery first of all, into which we have to let ourselves down, because it's like a great silence. You see, silence. We have to get still ourselves and let ourselves down into that mystery. Then we feel that out of that silence a word is coming, and everything that comes out of it is word. The whole universe can be understood as a word in the sense that it speaks to us. It has a message. And within the universe, every flower, every person, of course, every animal, every fruit is a word that comes to us. In order to understand that great mystery, you have to learn all the different languages. It speaks to you through a cherry in a very different way, and it speaks to you through a strawberry. So you could say, in order to understand God, you have to learn cherry language, and you have
Right, to go beyond the concept, but to actually experience the full richness of whatever the mystery of a cherry is. I think the example of a song, or even the sunset, where my husband will be, look over there, and like it just literally takes your breath away, where you're not expecting anything, you're not thinking about anything. He'll look,
That's exactly it. And
yeah.
that is when the mystery touches us. And that is the second thing. The first one is the silence.
Right.
The second one is word in the widest sense that comes out of that silence. And the third one is understanding. Because in order to have meaning, you need always three things. You need a word in the sense that you need something that has meaning.
Right.
And anything, if you listen to it deeply, that means out of the silence, you can understand it, and that understanding is the third element. Word, silence, word, and understanding. And understanding has to do with action. Every teacher knows that when you tell the children something, well, it goes in one ear and comes out the other. When you show them a picture, have a better chance that they will remember it. But if you make them do it with their own hands, some hand-on experiment, then they really understand. And so we understand that great mystery, not grasp it, but understand it by doing something. And it means doing something out of love. And love, again, is not, for me, some wishy-washy feeling, but it's not a feeling at all. It's an attitude towards life. I understand love as living yes to belonging. And if you want to apply that, all these many different forms of love that we know, from love of our sweetheart to love of our parents, love of our children, love of our country, love of our pets. Uh, it always applies, yes, to belonging, and you act according to, you act out that yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you act out that yes to belonging to life, then you are in contact with that great mystery, that
Mm-hmm.
God, if you use the right word.
Right. So here, what you broke out for me is that you have a couple blog posts that I read where you're talking about the three steps to gratefulness. And so now what I understand then is the gratefulness is in some way a sense of presence, a presence to the mystery of God, the magic. Is that what gratefulness
Yes,
is?
we came to it through kind of through the back door.
Yes.
But yes, we say that the practical method, sort of a very simple method for gratefulness, is simply stop, look, go.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as you rightly felt, refers to these three great, um, what shall I say, realms of the mystery. The stop leads us into the silence, even just for a split moment. It's
Right.
not a matter of stopping to meditate for half an hour. It's just like before you open your computer, you stop for a split second of silence, and then you open the computer. Or when you take a glass of water, you stop for a moment and you think, water, that, I mean, millions of people don't have drinking water. We have it. So immediately you get silence. Next thing is you look. And what do you look for? For the opportunity that life offers you at that moment. And that is a word, if you want, that speaks to you. And then the third step is go. Stop, look, go. And the go is respond to that word, that life speaks to you at that particular moment.
Okay, so we're going to do this. I have a glass of water. So I stop and I think, this is miraculous that I'm able to get this glass of water that I can drink right now. And that is the essence of my whole being is water. 99% of me is water. So,
Right.
I'm so grateful for this water. And I drink the water. Oh, it's like refreshing. Oh, good, we have the same glass. Cheers. So I drink the water and I think, so then the discover the opportunity, opening the hearts. So the stop, the look, I look at the water. And sadly, what I go to is, I'm so sad because I wonder whether this will always be. We're going to have, even in Seattle where it rains all the time, we're going to have a water issue at one point. There's not going to be enough water for us to survive, or too much water when the glacial caps. I go into like a not so happy place, honestly. Okay, so I don't know, where do you go when you look? So
Yeah.
I did the downer look. What's the upper look?
The go, that third part of what do you do with this water when you
Yeah.
have that go has may have many aspects. And the first one is I really enjoy it. I've been to places in Africa where I had no drinkable water,
Hmm.
and uh, I know what it means to be able to go to the faucet and just turn it on, and out comes
Yeah.
not only cold, fresh water, but warm water and hot water.
Yeah, it's a
It's just
miracle.
incredible. So the enjoyment, that is the
Hmm.
first thing. And we should learn to really enjoy not only the water, but every breath to enjoy it. But then comes another aspect. As I drink this water, I realize uh, how endangered our water supply is, and I commit myself to do something about it.
Hmm.
And we can do that. We know that one of the main uh, dangers for our water at the present moment is meat production or all animal products.
Hmm.
In order to have 1 pound of meat on your plate, so much water has been used to produce 1 pound of meat, as the average person uses in a whole year to take showers. So a friend of mine said,
Wow, that's huge.
I know what to do. He said, I will eat my meat. I just won't take any showers for a year. That's fine. But then you have only one hamburger per year because you have traded in already for all your showers. You took
Wow.
much water as you take showers in a whole year.
Right.
So most people don't know that.
Right.
And therefore, most people don't know that they can make a significant difference by, for instance, just one day a week not to eat meat.
Right.
Then they graduate and it's 2 days. But
Yeah.
just reduce it. You don't have to immediately become vegan.
Right.
You can reduce it. So sooner or later, and I tell that to our young people, and they understand it much better than the older ones, but sooner or later we will be vegan. The future is vegan, or it won't be any
Yeah.
future.
There's not a choice. We'll be forced to be vegan.
Yeah. See, it's very important to do things like turn off the water when it's not used. While you're brushing your teeth, you don't need to let the water running. Turn off the light if it isn't needed, and that's a big thing. But all these things together are 1 to 60 in comparison to what it is just to skip meat.
I love it. So then let's go back to the third part is love. Because you were talking about love. We had a conversation, I backdoored into it, but it's ultimately, it's about love. Because you said the third is about love. Help me connect.
To connect the two.
Yeah.
That's very easy because love means yes to belong, and and not just saying yes with your mouth, but living yes. And if I live yes to belonging, then I belong to the rainforest. I belong to the millions of people who don't have enough water. I belong to the whole universe. And if I belong in that sense, then I act as one acts towards people with whom one belongs together. So if in the family, for instance, somebody would go hungry, you would immediately say, well, this poor kid, we have to give him something to eat. Well, we are one human family. So in order to feed everybody, you have to have enough water. And to have enough water, you have to reduce your meat supply intake.
Okay, got it. So it's a yes to belonging. Yes, yes to we're all. It's if I were to translate it into the Buddhist ideology, we're all one. We're all connected. And so when I say yes to belonging, I recognize that I'm part of this greater world. It's not just CJ drinking water. Right now while I'm it's like no, there's actually this broader, bigger world around us. And how does that map to, you know, you as a Benedictine monk thinking about love, you as someone who's talking to Thich Nhat Hanh talking about love, how is your understanding about love developed over time?
How does it develop, you said, or how does it differ from the other
Oh, I'm just now I'm curious to answer both.
one? Well, it develops the lifelong because our when you look what really happens in your life, it is that your relationships grow more. You have more and more and more relationships. When you're born, you have a relationship to your mother, then to your father, then your sibling. More and more and more relationships, and if you're lucky, deeper and deeper relationships. Some of them not so deep, others deeper, and if you're lucky, you have a few friends or one friend with whom you have really a very deep relationship. So that is a sense of belonging, and cultivating these relationships is a yes to belonging. And so, how does this love grow in the course of your life? Through cultivating your relationships, and uh, and then we hit upon the question, how does it differ? Because you mentioned the Buddhists, and it's good. I'm very happy you mentioned them because they have awakened us to this reality. Many people have been awakened to the reality that we are all one, and so through the Dalai Lama and through other Buddhist teachings. But once you're awakened, you look at your own tradition, and if that happens to be a Christian tradition in my case, you see, oh, this in our tradition too. When the Buddhists say we all have Buddha nature in common, it's their way of saying what Christians say when St. Paul says, I live, yet not I, Christ lives in me. And Christ lives in you, and Christ lives in everybody that is around, and so we are all one on that level.
Mm.
And, and that is one of the discoveries of interreligious dialogue, that we have very different ways of expressing it, but what we are expressing is a basic human truth. And that human truth is that we are all one. And that is another way of arriving at that love. If we are all one, then let's act how one acts when one belongs together.
Yeah, I like that one person I interviewed said, when you look at someone, you're looking at yourself. If you see that person on the road who's hungry, you're looking at a different version of yourself, because if you are one, you're looking at you in a different form. And so what would you want to do at that point? That kind of ideology, if we're all one, at least for me, that was the one that really cemented it for me.
Absolutely right. And people can uh, easily experience that, because when a mother looks at the child and the child is hungry, she doesn't think, should I really give something to this child? I from myself or something. There's no thought. It's
Right,
exactly as if she were hungry. When the
right,
child is hungry, she is hungry.
right.
And we all belong together like mother and child. And so we look at the other person. If the other person needs something, we provide it. The difficulty is that mostly in the way we live, we don't see the hungry people. We don't see the people who don't have any water. And our media don't very often present us with these images. So we can easily forget them. So
Yeah.
this is why remembering is such an important element of this
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
drink this glass of water and you remember that so many people are thirsty, and then while you are enjoying it, and that's very important, you really enjoy it. It doesn't help the others if you don't enjoy it, but at the same time, you commit yourself to do something to help people who
Mhm. Mhm. Now, in the glass of water, that was kind of an easy one in some ways, because there's so much of a water crisis, and so there's two things. One is, I wonder if that works for everything, because there's certain things where I'm not going to go through and have a sad, motivated response to do something. Water is one of those that I definitely do. Um, does one always land at? I mean, my to-do list is now multiplied by 500. If I'm worried, I'm already a list person. My list is gonna. I'm worried that this is gonna consume me with guilt, shame, and a list that's really, really long. How does one rationally go about this? Or when you go through these three steps, are you just compounding guilt, or how do you do it? So I know that part of what you said is part of it is enjoyment of the water. But see, I would go, oh, I enjoyed it, and then I would. It's like 1/3 enjoyment, 2/3 of guilt, shame, and need to do something. How do you balance that?
I would say make the whole thing enjoyment, no room for guilt. Uh,
Okay.
there's enough guilt in the world. Just go, just erase it. No guilt. Uh, what you want is enjoyment, and now out of that enjoyment, you want to share it with all others.
Ah, okay.
Don't enjoy it, you just have guilt, and that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
If you have real enjoyment, you will go around and spread that enjoyment. Because if you see somebody, if you're really happy, let's say you just recently fallen in love, and you
Mm.
see somebody who is miserable, you will share your joy, and you would want that person to be also joyful. If you're really full of joy, you want everybody to be joyful.
Right.
And so, if you really enjoy your water, you will want to do something so that the whole world has that
Right. To
joy.
approach it from joy. I think that I don't know whether it's my background as an Asian person or my personality, but I always go to guilt. And I wonder how we move to that place of joy, because it's hard. Because I think we're more, the Protestant work ethic, you got to do that, that's kind of, you need to do, you have to, that's kind of more prevalent in our society. So that's where I snap to, I think. But how did you get to the point of enjoyment being the thing that is the thing that's the motivator?
That's a very interesting question. I've never asked myself that, but I was certainly brought up in this guilt-ridden culture, and unfortunately, the Catholic Church has contributed a lot to that too. So everything you have to look, is that a sin, and I'm offending God, and all.
Right.
And it's a matter of how you look at what is not good in the world. And I think we should take it very seriously that there are many things in the world that are really bad or evil or whatever you might want to call it. I do not want to take that lightly. If there are right now in this world 300,000 child soldiers, you never hear about them. Here and there you get a report, but imagine that 300,000 children, so under 14 or so,
Mm-hmm.
that are kidnapped and turned into soldiers, brainwashed, full of hate. Uh, this is terrible. That's just one little fact. So that is evil in the sense of life denying, not against this or that commandment, but life denying. And everything that's life denying, let's say, use that instead of bad or evil. There are many things that are seriously life denying,
Mm.
or violence, many, many things. So how are you going to look at them? Are you going to look at them as something that needs to be combated?
Right.
Is sort of the natural attitude. There
Right.
is, we kill it, we
Right.
fight
We
against
need to stop those children.
it.
Stop
But,
that. Yeah.
but there's a woman's aspect to it, and man or woman, we all have both in us. And if we cultivate the woman's approach to what is life denying, we look at it with a mother's eyes. And the mother looks at this child that behaves like a little devil and says, you can do it, you can do it, you'll outgrow it. And in that sense, you can look at the everything that's life denying in the world as the not yet good. And that
Ah.
it creates a space into which it can grow. The mother's eyes and the mother's look creates a space in which the child can become truly.
That's it. So you kind of say, that's not there, but I have faith that it will be there. As I mean, I have children where it's like I know that that's not going to happen, but I just have a deep faith because I have a faith in my son and what he represents and my love for him that it will happen. So the same kind of faith that something I can't see it right now, but something wonderful is going to happen out of this. So how does that motivate you to action? That would be like, just wait. Something good will happen.
No, 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 no. It can happen, and just as the mother doesn't only say, "Oh, yeah, he's going to outgrow this," but the mother helps him. The mother tries to understand first of all. That's the first step. Try to understand why people don't want to be bad. Uh, Even the worst people don't want to be bad. Uh, they, they they think it's good for them, and they don't think for everybody, about everybody else or whatever. They are in an illusion. They are misled. They are ignorant. So first you understand why do they do this. That's the first step. Second step is, can we establish some contact, like the mother. Very often it's not even words. She just puts the hand on the child's head. I can still, in my old age, feel my mother's hand on my
Oh,
hair. I can feel that.
mm,
That's an encouragement,
right.
much better than words. You can do it, you
Mm,
can do it.
mhm,
So we need to understand, we need to give encouragement and establish relationships. And
mm,
once you have established relationships, uh, everything begins to improve. And
mm,
then a very important aspect is to ask, where is my own uh, contribution to making that person the way they are?
Mm-hmm.
Have I really helped the human race to get a good education? In the United States, we pay our taxes from January through August for weapons
Mm-hmm.
and schooling and traffic and healthcare and everything else starts paying in September. So how about starting a little earlier? Do we really need weapons? Are they protecting anybody? Or is this maybe our illusion that
Mm-hmm.
national security? I think national security is a very questionable thing. In the world in which we live, national security is insecurity. Only everybody's security we have to have in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if everybody thinks of their national security and gets more and more weapons, sooner or later they're going to use them. If
Right.
you think of the whole world as one family and say, let's make people happy, let's use that money that we are using on weapons to give people a better life, a better education, give women an education. There's so many parts of the world where
Mm-hmm.
women do not have the means to be educated, to be independent human beings. If we use our means that way, it will contribute a great deal more to peace than what we are doing.
Hmm. So going back to what you're saying, if it's a yes to belonging, the weapons is antithetical to a yes to belonging, right? Because if we are one, why are we fighting ourselves, and why would we fund fighting ourselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Let's
so.
create a different world. This is the wonderful thing about gratefulness, that it, first of all, the best thing about it is that it gives you joy. If we all know people who have everything that one would need to be happy,
Hmm.
and they are not happy, and you ask why not, and when you look carefully, they are not happy because they are not grateful. They have
Hmm.
everything they could be happy with, but they want something else, or they want more, or they want different things.
Right.
And then we all know people who have practically nothing, and they are really joyful. Why? Because they are grateful for the little bit that they have.
Hmm.
We know that each one of us holds the key to joy and happiness in our hands if we are grateful. And
Hmm.
I say joy rather than happiness, because what we really want is a happiness that doesn't depend on what happens. And that's what I call joy.
Mm.
If you're happy because something nice happens to us, we can be sure in life sooner or later something that's not so nice happens to us. But if we have joy, that means even in unhappy situations, we look, yes, this is not something for which I would be grateful in itself, but it gives me an opportunity.
Right.
Most of the time, what we receive gives us the opportunity to enjoy. And we
Mm.
overlook that because we are so busy with other things. So
Mm.
the first thing when you practice gratefulness, practice stop, look, go, is that you discover there's so much more to enjoy.
Hmm.
Then you come across something for which you cannot be grateful: violence, oppression, exploitation, infidelity, lies, all sorts of things. But in the moment in which you are confronted with something for which you cannot be grateful, you can be grateful for the opportunity to
Right.
learn something by it, to grow by it, or even to protest, to say, no, that's a wonderful opportunity we have. And
Right.
I remember how young people in the 60s and in the 70s protested, say, against the Vietnam War, or how the students protested against apartheid, and really contributed here in the United States a great deal to the end of apartheid, because they forced their own universities to divest in South African stock.
Hmm.
So contributed here by protesting, by saying, no, we don't want to go along with that. And nowadays, we have lost that. I'm looking.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of racial tension in that, and it's hard to see police abusing African American people, and it's hard to see gays be discriminated against. And I think that it's moving. It's
It
as
is,
you were saying, like I have hope. You know, as a mother looks at a child, it's like okay, it may feel really painful,
yeah,
but it does feel like an opportunity for some really great things to happen, even though the pain and the sadness when you see the actual violence that's perpetrated against people, innocent people, it's hard.
it's very painful. But you are right. There is hope. There is hope in the sense of openness for surprise. That is
Yeah.
hope. And this openness makes you act very differently from if you don't have that hope. And that hope is something different from hopes, because hopes are always something that you can imagine.
Right.
Hope is openness for the unimaginable that transcends all the things you can imagine. You ought to have many hopes. You have to imagine how it's going, how you wish that it would go. But if it doesn't go that way, you need not lose hope, because oh, surprise, surprise, that doesn't work. That hope is shattered. But now we have another hope.
And then I think it's going back to the things that you said in the very beginning about God or the mystery of life, that maybe the thing that you hope for was not the very best thing anyways.
That's
Maybe
right.
there's actually a better outcome that you can't comprehend with your human mind, but that a bigger force can understand that's out there. Sometimes I go there too.
Absolutely right. My favorite name for God is surprise. All other names of God are boxing God in. They are not really such good names.
Yeah.
Surprise. See, that leaves it open. And everything that is alive is surprising. And God is life itself, if you understand the term correctly. So it ought to be surprising, and we ought to be open for that surprise. And those are the three things we have hit upon in love, yes to belonging, hope, openness for surprise, and that trust in life, that radical trust in life, which is faith. Because
Right.
faith is not believing something that follows and is always limited by our understanding and by our culture. But what connects every person with faith is trust in life, and thereby trust in God, if we want to use that.
Mm. So those three things, love, faith, and then what was the other one?
Hope, love,
Hope.
faith, hope, love.
And those three things were the what are those? I got lost in the words. And I got lost in the magic and I forgot what the concept was you're sharing. I'm sorry.
Well, we are hitting upon really deep things here, so it shouldn't be surprising that it's a little difficult to go along. But it's not really complicated. It's
Yeah.
very simple.
Right.
It's just our minds are pretty complicated.
Yeah,
And
I went with the words and was so present with the words. I'm like, wait, what are those three things? So what are those three things? He said hope, faith, love. What are they? You said
oh,
these are the three things that we need for
for life, really,
oh for life. Okay.
life, but really dealing with life. First, we need faith. That means
Yes.
trust in life. If
Right.
you can refuse that trust, you don't have to have it, but you can check what happens if I don't trust that life gives me good things, even if it looks bad, because the packaging is pretty
Right.
ugly.
Right.
If you don't trust that life is giving you good things, then you're constantly fearful,
Mm. Mhm.
constantly going against the stream. And that doesn't lead anywhere. That makes you anxious, that makes you sick. So just for self-preservation, trust life. Trust
Mhm.
life. That's the
Mhm.
starting point. That's faith. If you trust life, whenever it's alive, it's surprising, because if
Mhm.
it's not surprising, it's mechanical. So if
Right.
it's alive, it's surprising. Next thing, openness for surprise, that's hope. And
Mhm.
if you're open for surprise, it's a surprise how everything is connected with everything. that we are able to talk here is connected with the work of millions and millions of people who invent computers, design Skype. Uh, that I even could get here is it depends on every person that tightens a screw on the wheels of an airplane.
Right.
All connected with one another and with the animals and with the plants. And to discover that surprising connectedness, you say, yes, that's it. And this,
Yes.
yes, not only with your mouth, but with your whole being, that is love.
Yes. Love, enjoyment, love, joy, enjoyment of this miracle that we're
That
given.
can not only change our own lives, it will make our own lives more joyful, but it can change a whole culture, because uh, gratefulness and joy are contagious.
Yes.
And imagine a culture that is not like ours, fearful. That is probably, unfortunately, but the main characteristic. Fearful. Out of fear, it becomes aggressive. Uh, Out of fear, it becomes a case of rivalry. We want
Right.
to get ahead with our elbows. And out of fear, we think there isn't enough for everybody, and we become greedy. And
Right.
now imagine a culture in which everybody is grateful. If you're grateful, you're curious. This is nice.
Mm.
And you're curious. And the moment you're curious, you can no longer be fearful. Those
Mm.
don't get together. You're curious. So for a moment, you forget your fear. So if you're grateful, you're not fearful. If you're grateful, you are not aggressive, because aggression springs from fear. If you are grateful, you are cooperative, because you're grateful for what all these other people do. I couldn't
Mm.
be here if it weren't for millions
Mm.
of other people, maybe people whom I will never meet. So you are cooperative and you are sharing. Because
Mm.
if you're grateful, there's always enough for sharing.
Mm.
Remember,
Uh,
grateful people, the poorest people, when they are grateful, there's always something to share. It's amazing.
mm. That's why you focus on great. There's so many different things that you could focus on: love, forgiveness, all these things. Is that why you focus on gratefulness? Because it kind
Because that contains all of it. You see, it's sort of the master key to all of that.
right.
And that sharing, a friend told me yesterday, he was in he visited he's a reporter, and he visited a camp, a refugee camp, where there were children. And the children had to flee quickly, and they were just taking one thing, and one had a teddy bear and one had a
Mm.
kid. And this one boy had marbles. He had a handful of little marbles, and he gave the reporter one marble out of this handful of marbles that he had. That was the only thing he had in life.
No.
Very touching.
Yeah, very, very touching.
Yeah, that's life.
Yeah, yeah. I love the lens of life that you live. I aspire. I have to remember the hard part is the stopping and the looking. You know,
We
putting the pen down.
yes, we can actually give ourselves little reminders for stopping.
Yeah.
It is a good start. Like if you put a little sticker on your computer outside, uh, you will see the sticker before you open the computer, and it will give you a split second to say, "Oh, thank you for having this computer," and you will, with a very different attitude, open it
Mm,
up.
mm-hmm. Yeah, little reminders. I like that
The
idea.
car key, and before you turn your car key, you will stop for a split second and think, I've got a car. It may not be the model that you like, or it may not even start so easily. It will eventually start and get you there. And for that, you can be grateful.
Yes. I love that idea of as you begin the next transition, just stop. You know, if I'm putting the pen down and going from writing to chanting, stop and go, ah, the miracle of music. It's just that little split second in the gap between transitions. If you can just stop. I like that idea. I'm going to try that.
You got it. And the next thing is look. And what you really look for is the opportunity of that present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Offers
Mm-hmm.
you an opportunity. What is that opportunity? We can, train ourselves to become more sensitive to the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as I say, mostly the opportunity to enjoy. And
Yes.
enjoy it, and no guilt, and your joy will overflow to others.
Well,
And that's
I'm thoroughly enjoying this interview. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
that
it. Gratitude.
was a lot of count, and you have wonderful questions. And I wish you the very best for your program, and much love to all your hearers.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.